This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
A Supreme Court decision surrounding a controversial immigration law in Texas.
We have to have a secure border.
I'm Clayton Neville.
6 states hold elections and 5 primaries are quickly decided. We'll have the results.
President Biden and congressional leaders say they have a spending deal. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
He was once an advisor to the president, but now he spends his time behind bars. I'm Pamela Furr.
A new lawsuit accuses New York Mayor Eric Adams of sexually assaulting a woman in 1993. I'm Jennifer King.
Investors are waiting to hear what the Fed chair has to say about interest rates this afternoon. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
An attorney who is charged with illegally accessing Michigan's voter machines in 2020 has been arrested. I'm Hayat Panjwani.
Tennessee's Rock Dock trades a doctor's coat for prison clothes. All ahead on America in the Morning. In a decision that came sooner than expected, the U.S. Supreme Court is allowing an immigration law in Texas to take effect. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
SB 4 lets state law enforcement in Texas arrest people suspected of entering the country illegally. Illegal immigration, essentially against state law.
I'm encouraged. I think the bill was written correctly, and I think it passes constitutional muster. I think it's the right policy for the state of Texas. We have to have a secure border.
State lawmakers like House Speaker Dave Phelan say it's a bill with widespread support.
And that's not just a Republican, ideal. That is independents, that is swing voters, that's even some Democrats who want a secure border. So SB 4 goes a long way to address that, and it should be the law in the state of Texas.
Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick told Fox News the decision solidifies Texas's argument
that Texas has the right to defend ourselves against this organized, mobilized, cartel-driven invasion of our country.
Critics say the law will lead to racial profiling and fear in some Texas communities.
Driving family members to the grocery store, to the doctor, to the church or school.
State Rep Victoria Niave.
This bill applies statewide. Make no mistake that this bill applies to American citizens.
The federal government argues that immigration is a federal issue, and states don't decide who's let into the country. The Supreme Court ruling, though, doesn't necessarily relate to that argument. Instead, the High Court deciding not to further extend a block on the law by lower courts, essentially taking issue with procedure and sending the issue back to the appeals courts. It immediately heads to the Fifth Circuit. All 6 of the Supreme Court's conservative justices agreed with the decision to let the law take hold. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, in a dissent, though, noted concerns the law will discourage the reporting of trafficking crimes out of fear of potential deportation. The legal battle continues, but the decision critical in the continued argument over state and federal rights at the southern border. I'm Clayton Neville.
Despite the presidential primaries being locked up by Donald Trump for the GOP and President Biden for the Democrats, 6 states held elections on Tuesday that could also include congressional implications. In Ohio, in a 3-person race to secure the Republican nomination for the Senate, Trump-backed candidate Bernie Moreno will challenge incumbent Democrat Sherrod Brown in November. Republicans Vince Fong and Mike Boudreau were the top 2 candidates, with Democrat Marissa Wood a close third in a special election for the open seat once held by former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who left Congress earlier this year, vacating that district's representation. In California, if no candidate of any party receives 50% of the vote, the 2 leading vote-getters will advance to a runoff scheduled for May 21st, and that winner will have to run again in November. Ohio, Florida, Arizona, Illinois, and Kansas held primaries for president, with all races called very quickly for the presumptive nominees. The White House and congressional leaders say they've reached a spending deal that would avert a potential government shutdown this weekend, but the vote still needs to be taken in a divided House of Representatives. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani is following the story.
President Biden and congressional leaders say they have a spending deal as a partial government shutdown looms. The question now is how fast lawmakers can pass the bills. Funding for some key federal agencies is due to expire at midnight Friday. White House spokeswoman Karine Jean-Pierre says House and Senate panels are drafting the package that would fund the agencies through the fiscal year. Once it passes,
and then the president will sign it immediately.
But time's running short. A House rule gives lawmakers 72 hours to review a bill before voting. If the text comes out late today, the chamber wouldn't take it up until hours before a potential shutdown. The Senate would then have to speed up its own process before the midnight deadline. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
It's off to federal prison for a former Trump official, plus lawsuit for New York City's top official. Those stories when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back to America in the Morning. Travel concerns for some northern tier states. With a check of the nation's forecast, here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carl Erickson.
You may run into slower travel around the Great Lakes into northern New England today. A fast-moving Clipper-type storm will spread widespread snow showers across northern Michigan into upstate New York and northern New England. Any heavier snow shower can briefly reduce visibility and result in slower travel. However, once you head closer to the coast, it will be warm enough for rain showers this afternoon in the big cities of the I-95 corridor from Boston to the nation's capital. Another area where the weather may slow you down today will be across parts of Oklahoma and Texas, as spring warmth surging northward combined with an approaching storm will lead to showers and thunderstorms across the panhandle of Texas into western Oklahoma. Some of the storms in these areas can turn severe this afternoon and evening, capable of producing large hail and damaging winds. A lot of clouds will be found across the rest of Texas, with some light showers and drizzle over deep South Texas. Watch out for slippery travel over parts of North and South Dakota today, as a stripe of snow moves across the area with highs in the 20s and 30s. In between the snow across the Dakotas and the storms over Texas and Oklahoma, much of Kansas and Nebraska will squeeze in a nice day with some sunshine. Cloudy skies with a few showers will dampen parts of the Pacific Northwest, mainly over western parts of Washington and Oregon. Sunny skies and warm temperatures will make for a nice day over most of California and Nevada. Beautiful weather will also be found over the southeast with plenty of sunshine and highs in the 70s. It will also be pleasant across the Tennessee Valley into the Carolinas with highs in the 60s and 70s. And that's the weather across America. In New York City today, afternoon showers, high 55. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, mostly sunny with a high of 72. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carl Erickson.
Remember, you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Peter Navarro, who served as the White House trade advisor to former President Donald Trump, exhausted all of his appeals and is now in federal prison. Pamela Furr has the story.
Navarro has begun serving a 4-month sentence for defying a congressional subpoena. This after Chief Justice John Roberts said no to his 11th hour bid to appeal his conviction without turning himself in. Now, he spoke to the press in Miami before he began serving his sentence.
When I walk in that prison today, the justice system, such as it is, will have done a crippling blow to the constitutional separation of powers and executive privilege.
He's been assigned to an 80-person dormitory reserved for older inmates in a Miami facility where most are serving time for white-collar crime. Navarro is the first former White House official to actually go to prison after being convicted of contempt of Congress. He was charged and found guilty after he refused to comply with a subpoena from the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol. I'm Pamela Furr.
New trouble for the leader of America's largest city. Correspondent Jennifer King reports New York Mayor Eric Adams is facing a lawsuit alleging sexual abuse 30 years ago from a time when he was a police officer.
A new lawsuit accuses New York Mayor Eric Adams of sexually assaulting a woman in 1993. The case adds to growing legal troubles for Adams, who currently faces a federal campaign fundraising investigation. The suit filed Monday offers the first public details of a claim brought in November. An accuser says she told multiple people over the years that Adams drove her to a vacant lot and demanded a sexual favor in exchange for his help advancing her career in the city's transit police department. After she refused, he exposed himself, according to the lawsuit. At the time, Adams was a police officer and a high-ranking member of the Guardians Association. The mayor denies the allegations, which an attorney for the city described as ludicrous.
I've been very clear from the day this came out. It did not happen. I don't recall meeting the person, and that is not who I am as a person. That I am specific about.
The accuser's attorney, Megan Goddard, asked that the AP not publish her name, but says the accuser believes sexual abusers must be held to account no matter who they are. I'm Jennifer King.
When we return on America in the Morning, the Fed talks interest rates, realtors talk reduced commissions. After these messages. This is America in the Morning. The fast food restaurant franchise Subway ratcheted up the cola wars, signing a 10-year deal with PepsiCo that begins in 2025 and will ditch Coca-Cola products in favor of Mountain Dew, Gatorade, and Aquafina. Subway has nearly 37,000 locations in more than 100 countries and has a 20-year relationship with Coca-Cola. Subway has also extended their partnership with Frito-Lay through 2030, so you can still get your Ruffles and baked Lays with your sandwich. Here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger with Wednesday Business.
Wall Street opens this morning after a second winning day in a row for the major averages. The Dow rallied more than 300 points yesterday. The Fed not expected to cut interest rates today when it wraps up a two-day policy meeting. But investors are hoping to glean more hints on the Fed's economic outlook when Chairman Jerome Powell speaks later this afternoon. Some investors aren't very optimistic.
To me, the reactive Fed, the data-dependent Fed, is not seeing what they want to see on the inflation front. And that's why I think they're going to have to put a little bit of dent in the optimism that's out there right now about rates possibly going lower. And so I think the market is in for a wake-up call. I mean, it will eventually have a moment where it actually sees a recession that's still likely.
Northwestern Mutual's Brent Shute on CNBC. U.S. national security officials holding a closed-door briefing today for senators on threats posed by Chinese-owned video app TikTok. One senator told CNBC if American apps can't sit on the phones of Chinese citizens, then TikTok shouldn't be on the phones of half the U.S. population.
We cannot, American companies cannot go and gather information in China. If we can't reciprocate in a country, then there's something wrong. And that tells you everything. Other than that, everyone knows they're using that information to basically infiltrate our markets, knowing how we think, maybe controlling how we vote, things of that sort. They should not be allowed to accumulate that type of information from America.
West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin on CNBC. JetBlue cutting flights to cut costs after the government blocked its purchase of Spirit Airlines. It's cutting flights to Florida, Latin America, and other places.
We've heard a lot of chatter this week about that 6% realtor commission.
Well, that standard fee may be going away if a judge approves a settlement in an antitrust lawsuit over it with the National Association of Realtors. But not yet. Buyers and sellers may be paying that during this busy spring home buying season.
What will happen starting this summer, nothing changes for right now, is that buyers and buyers agents, if they elect to use one, and sellers agents, should they elect to use one, because you're not obligated to use a real estate agent in the United States, and you're not obligated to pay 6%, 10%, or 1%.
Real estate broker Ryan Serhant on CNBC.
I think everyone is on the same page that compensation should be a free market conversation, and that's what you're going to have.
On today's watch list, a Fed announcement on interest rates, 2 p.m. Eastern. Earnings coming from General Mills, Signet Jewelers, Micron, Chewy, Five Below, and KB Home. Reddit's initial public offering set to price tonight. Major League Baseball regular season opens. Dodgers and Padres are in Seoul, South Korea. 2 more first 4 March Madness games tonight, and the Powerball jackpot tonight, at least $687 million.
CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. When we return on America in the Morning, attorney arrested in voting machine scandal after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. Attorney arrested moments after a hearing in federal court ended where she represented a client being sued by Dominion Voting Systems for defamation. As correspondent Haya Panjwani reports, that attorney now faces arrest in Michigan on charges of illegally breaching voting machines during efforts to upend the results of the 2020 election.
Pro-Trump Michigan attorney Stephanie Lambert was arrested after a hearing over possible sanctions for distributing confidential emails from Dominion Voting Systems. The company has been the target of conspiracy theories over former President Donald Trump's 2020 election loss. Earlier this month, a Michigan judge issued a bench warrant for Lambert. That was after she didn't show up for a hearing where she was charged for accessing voting machines to find a conspiracy against Trump. Before that, she'd also tried to sue to overturn Trump's Michigan loss, but she was unsuccessful. U.S. Marshals say Lambert was arrested on local charges. I'm Haya Panjwani.
A nurse practitioner who became known as the Tennessee Rock Doc will be heading to federal prison. Correspondent Norman Hall has the story.
Nurse practitioner Jeffrey W. Young, Jr., who called himself the Rock Doc, has been sentenced to 20 years in prison for illegally prescribing thousands of doses of opioids, including oxycodone and fentanyl. Federal prosecutors said the prescriptions were given in return for money and sex. Young, who was sentenced in federal court and was convicted about a year ago, operated a clinic in Jackson, Tennessee. Young was among 60 people indicted in April 2019. Authorities said the defendants included 53 medical professionals tied to some 350,000 prescriptions and 32 million pills. I'm Norman Hall.
America in the Morning for Wednesday, March 20th, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay, senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
Donald Trump taking heat from some after comments made about Jewish Americans voting for Democrats. I'm John Stolness in Washington.
The U.S. discouraging a ground invasion in Rafah. I'm Clayton Neville.
Congress hears who to blame for the failure of the Afghanistan pullout.
An Arizona lawmaker who learned her pregnancy is not viable has told her colleague she plans to have an abortion. I'm Norman Hall.
A lawmaker in Nebraska is facing backlash for invoking a colleague's name in a graphic account of rape. I'm Ed Donahue.
Two members of the so-called Mississippi Goon Squad learn their fate.
I'll have highlights from Don Lemon's interview with Elon Musk. I'm Kevin Carr.
Back after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. As AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carl Erickson explains, it's not the most active of weather days.
There will not be that many storms crossing the nation today, but there will be areas where winter snow and cold will be trying to hang on and where spring warmth and thunderstorms will be expanding. As has been the case for the past couple of days, chilly air will hang on across the Great Lakes into New England with highs only in the 30s this afternoon. A fast-moving Clipper-type storm will bring widespread snow showers to northern Michigan into upstate New York and spilling over into northern New England. Any heavier snow shower can briefly reduce visibility and result in slower travel. However, once you head closer to the coast, it will be warm enough for rain showers this afternoon in the big cities of the I-95 corridor from Boston to the nation's capital. Winter's chill will also be hanging on across the northern plains with highs only in the 20s and 30s with a stripe of snow spreading across the Dakotas. Meanwhile, spring warmth surging northward combined with an approaching storm will lead to showers and thunderstorms across the panhandle of Texas into western Oklahoma. Some of the storms in these areas can turn severe this afternoon and evening, capable of producing large hail and damaging winds. A lot of clouds will be found across the rest of Texas with some light rain showers and drizzle over deep South Texas. In between the snow across the Dakotas and the storms over Texas and Oklahoma, much of Kansas and Nebraska will squeeze in a nice day with some sunshine. Beautiful weather will be found over the southeast with plenty of sunshine and highs in the 70s. It will also be pleasant across the Tennessee Valley into the Carolinas with highs in the 60s and 70s. Sunny skies and warm temperatures will make for a nice day over most of California and Nevada, but there'll be more clouds over the northwest with showers crossing western parts of Washington and Oregon. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carl Erickson.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Democrats and some in the Jewish community are lambasting former President Donald Trump over comments he made about Jewish Americans who vote for Democrats. John Stolness has that from Washington.
In an interview Monday with one of his former top White House advisors, Seb Gorka, Trump called out Jewish Americans who vote Democratic.
Democrat Party hates Israel. Any Jewish person that votes for Democrats hates their religion. They hate everything about Israel, and they should be ashamed of themselves because Israel will be destroyed.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, the top-ranking Jewish American in Congress, says Trump is pushing a Nazi Germany-era trope that Jewish allegiance is to their religion rather than their country.
The former president's comments were utterly disgusting and a textbook example of the kind of anti-Semitism facing Jews, pushing the dangerous anti-Semitism trope of dual loyalty.
Trump has made comments like this before, here in 2019.
You vote for a Democrat, you're being very disloyal to Jewish people, and you're being very disloyal to Israel. And only weak people would say anything other than that.
Schumer on Monday called for the Israeli government to hold new elections in an effort to see current Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu replaced by a more moderate leader. The back and forth continued yesterday, with Trump responding to Schumer's remarks.
I think that the Democrats have been very, very opposed to Jewish people. That's true, and to Israel. All you have to do is look at Senator Schumer. What he did with Israel is a disgrace, and I think Israel will probably not forget it very soon. It's a very sad situation.
Trump was in Palm Beach to vote in Florida's primary yesterday.
If you look at all of our presidents, they're saying Trump was the best for Israel, by far the best for Israel, and we're doing very well with the Jewish vote, as you can see in the polls.
He also spent much of yesterday morning on his Truth Social account decrying what he says is unfairness over having to pay a $454 million bond following fraud convictions in New York last month. Over multiple posts, Trump said he shouldn't have to pay until after the appeals process plays out, and that he shouldn't be forced to have a fire sale of his properties in order to pay the bond. That bond is due on Monday. John Stolness, Washington.
The United States insists it's still working to bring aid to Gaza as Israel promises to eliminate Hamas from the southern city of Rafah. Correspondent Clayton Neville has the latest on the situation in the Middle East.
Israeli leaders say a chunk of Hamas fighters and resources are based in Rafah, and because of that, Israeli forces plan to eliminate them in that area. This week, more than a dozen people killed in attacks by Israel in Rafah as the U.S. discourages a ground attack, saying it would be a mistake. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin.
Israel has a right to defend itself, but there's also a need to protect the civilians in the battle space. And again, the two things aren't mutually exclusive.
As for more aid for Gaza,
there is a lot of work that needs to be done to ensure that this kind of aid can get to the kind of places that it needs to go.
State Department Deputy Spokesperson Vedant Patel.
We continue to be deeply concerned about the report that's indicating that famine is imminent in Gaza. This report makes clear that the amount of aid reaching the people in Gaza is insufficient, and that more needs to be done. We need to redouble our efforts to ensure that aid can get to the places that it needs to go, both via land routes, via airdrops, and this forthcoming maritime corridor as well.
The White House says it's in continued conversation with Israel. In fact, President Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke with the message that goals Israel wants to achieve in Rafah can be achieved by other means than a ground invasion. I'm Clayton Neville.
Two top former generals told a congressional committee that Biden administration planning failures led to the chaotic exit from Afghanistan 3 years ago. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports.
23 diplomats saying if you continue down this road, disaster will ensue. Was that dissent cable shared with either of you? This is a formal channel going to the Secretary of State himself. Was that shared with you as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs? Was that shared with you as the commander?
I've never seen it.
I didn't see it at the time, and I haven't seen it since, and I would like to see that dissent.
I think the American people would like to see that.
The top two U.S. generals who oversaw the Afghanistan evacuation in 2021 are blaming Biden administration planning failures for the chaos.
Our mission, the U.S. military mission statement, was to prevent an attack on the United States of America from the territory of Afghanistan. That mission was accomplished for 20 consecutive years. You accomplished your mission. Every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine accomplished their mission. This country was defended.
It's the first time the rift between military leaders and the administration's been publicly exposed. First, there was the president's decision to keep just 650 troops in Afghanistan.
We needed to maintain a minimum force of 2,500 troops.
If we go down to zero, you're going to see a rapid collapse of the Afghan government and the Afghan military.
Former Joint Chiefs Chairman Mark Milley and Frank McKenzie, who led U.S. Central Command, told a House panel another big issue was the State Department's delay in starting an evacuation.
Fundamental flaw.
The fatal flaw.
Their remarks contrasted with a White House review blaming the military for the chaos, saying President Biden's decisions were severely constrained by predecessor Donald Trump's withdrawal agreements.
To all the veterans of Afghanistan, hold your heads high, and I know there are several in the room today. Know that you did your duty. Each of you did what your country asked of you under extreme circumstances.
Sagar Meghani, Washington.
When we return on America in the Morning, accusations of being obscene for a Nebraska lawmaker and former Mississippi sheriff's deputies sentenced to prison. That and more when America in the Morning continues after these messages. I'm John Trout. America in the Morning continues. Arizona does have laws regarding abortion, but one state senator took to the floor of the legislature to announce she has no choice but to have the procedure. Correspondent Norman Hall explains why.
An Arizona lawmaker who learned her pregnancy is not viable has told her colleague she plans to have an abortion.
It was a pregnancy that we had been trying for, and we were heartbroken over it. But now I wish I could tell you otherwise. But after numerous ultrasounds and blood draws, we have determined that my pregnancy is once again not progressing and is not viable. And once again, I have scheduled an appointment to terminate my pregnancy.
State Senator Ava Birch is a registered nurse known for her reproductive rights activism.
If we're going to pass legislation that impacts how people in the healthcare community have to operate, then we have to understand what the impact of that is going to be on their practices, on their patients, and on the outcomes in the community.
The mother of two says the current Arizona law that requires an invasive transvaginal ultrasound interferes with women's rights.
Our laws are deliberately, transparently coercive, trying to shame and humiliate and cause distress.
A signature drive is underway to add a constitutional right to abortion in Arizona.
I don't think people should have to justify their abortions, but I'm choosing to talk about why I made this decision, because I want us to be able to have meaningful conversations about the reality of how the work that we do in this body impacts people in the real world.
I'm Norman Hall.
Coming up later in the show, how the overturning of Roe v. Wade has affected abortions nationwide. A Nebraska state lawmaker is receiving scorn from both Democrats and Republicans demanding his resignation. Ed Donahue has that report.
During debate on a bill about what's considered obscene material at school libraries, Republican State Senator Steve Halloran read an excerpt from a memoir of a woman's experience of sexual violence when she was 18.
He started pumping me again.
During a graphic excerpt about rape, Halloran said the name Senator Kavanaugh several times.
I kneel before him, Senator Kavanaugh.
Apparently referencing Democratic State Senator Michaela Kavanaugh.
I didn't know you were capable of such cruelty.
Kavanaugh says this is not the way to debate the issue.
Let's have a real conversation, but don't start reading rape scenes and saying my name over and over again, Senator Halloran.
Halloran later apologized, but said he was mentioning Michaela Kavanaugh's brother, who is also a state senator. I'm Ed Donahue.
2 former Mississippi sheriff's deputies have been sentenced for their part in torturing 2 black men after a neighbor complained that they were staying in a home with a white woman. An update on that story from Lisa Dwyer.
Hunter Elward and Jeffrey Middleton were part of a group of a so-called goon squad that burst into the men's home without a warrant and assaulted Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Terrell Parker with stun guns, a sex toy, and other objects in January 2023. After Elward shot Jenkins in the mouth in a botched mock execution, they devised a cover-up that included planting drugs and a gun. Jenkins, who is now a former singer and musician, still has trouble speaking. Elward received about 20 years in prison, while Middleton received more than 17 years. 4 other former law enforcement officers are set for sentencing in the case later this week. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
The NASDAQ trades stock for thousands of major companies, so when they have an outage, it's a big deal. Thankfully, they quickly recovered and no trades were lost, purportedly. Here's Chuck Palm with that in today's Tech News.
The NASDAQ was hit with yet another technical glitch this week, just 2 hours before opening this past Monday. NASDAQ did not give details about the severity of the problem, but it is its second technical glitch in the last couple of months. They did post on their website, however, that it was related to the matching engine software, a system that matches buy and sell orders. NASDAQ did resolve the issue early in the morning and said that all systems are operating normally and they will provide a full post-mortem when available. At least one trader did post concerns about a brief dip in the NVIDIA stock price at 6:40 a.m. and said it was probably attributed to the outage. The trader said it could have been due to incorrect quotes being entered into the NASDAQ. It's worth noting that the NASDAQ does have backup systems, and the self-help was declared as a redundancy, and other exchanges helped pick up the slack. It's also worth noting the uptick in technical glitches in major systems this year. Leave a comment at allthetoptech.tech. I'm Chuck Palm.
Hot hoops action and more with Robert Workman on America in the Morning and Wednesday Sports.
The big dance, the NCAA basketball tournament got underway last night in Dayton. In the opener, Wagner won its first ever tournament game, holding off Howard 71-68. The Seahawks led by as many as 17 and were up by 13 with 3.5 minutes to play before the Bison went on a 14-2 run to make it a 1-point game with 18 seconds left. But Howard just couldn't get that last shot to fall. Wagner coach Donald Copeland could finally exhale.
I think it's huge, man, to get an NCAA win added to everything that's happened.
They'll face West top seed North Carolina tomorrow afternoon. In the other game, Colorado State annihilated Virginia 67-42 to earn a 10 seed in the Midwest and a date with Texas tomorrow night. 2 more games in Dayton tonight. NIT opening round last night, 4 of the 9 home teams lost, including LSU and Providence. 7 more first-round contests tonight, including all 4 top seeds: Indiana State, Wake Forest, Seton Hall, and Villanova. NHL, a trio of hat tricks last night. The Jets doubled up the Rangers 4-2 in a clash of division leaders. Mark Scheifele lit the lamp 3 times. Bruins bruised the Senators 6-2. David Pasternak with a hat trick.
It's definitely fun, when your game is on, and it's fun. Feel definitely special because it was 2 backhanders and a high tip. I don't get many of those.
And a header for Mikko Rantanen as the Avalanche shaded the Blues 4-3. NBA, the Nuggets turned back the Timberwolves in a big one out west. Nikola Jokic had 35 points. Denver now in a virtual tie with Oklahoma City for the conference lead. Minnesota just a game out. Rockets over the Wizards for their 6th straight. Mavericks sweep the Spurs. Pelicans pounded the Nets. And the Magic buzzed the Hornets to clinch at least a play-in spot in the East. And it's opening day in Major League Baseball in South Korea for the first time. The Dodgers taking on the Padres in the first of a 2-game series. Opening day on this side of the Pacific is a week from tomorrow. That's Wednesday Sports.
Thanks, Robert. When we return, Tesla CEO grilled in contentious interview when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. Despite the Supreme Court ruling on Roe v. Wade and states making procedures restrictive, a new report shows the number of abortions performed in the U.S. has increased in the past 4 years, with medications on the rise. Correspondent Shelley Adler reports.
Medical abortions are up since 2020. More than 6 in 10 abortions last year were done through medication. That's up from 53% in 2020. The Guttmacher Institute, a research group that supports abortion rights, said about 643,000 medication abortions took place in the first full calendar year after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This data was released a week before the High Court will hear arguments in a case that could impact how women get access to mifepristone, which is usually used with another pill in medical abortions. I'm Shelley Adler.
There were some pretty intense moments in an interview by former CNN host Don Lemon with Elon Musk. Kevin Carr has that story.
On Monday, the first episode of The Don Lemon Show landed on multiple platforms. Elon Musk, who had originally brokered a deal for exclusive content on his social media platform, was the first interview, which had some tense moments. Musk, a free speech absolutist, called content moderation a form of censorship, even when it comes to hate speech.
So, Don, you love censorship, is what you're saying?
No, I don't love censorship.
Then why are you asking?
I believe in moderation, but I don't believe in
censorship. Moderation is a propaganda word for censorship.
Lemon also questioned Musk about some of the statements he made reflecting the Great Replacement theory.
Because the first time that you posted on X about this Jewish conspiracy, you ended up apologizing.
I didn't call it a conspiracy. I just said that there's a simple matter of incentives. You don't need a conspiracy when you have basic incentives.
Musk finally became noticeably upset when Lemon questioned him about the loss of advertisers on X due to an increase in hate speech.
So you said if they kill the company, it's them. But doesn't the buck stop with you? I mean, you're
Don, I have to say, choose your question carefully. There's 5 minutes left.
In the end, Musk offered his goals for his impact on society.
If I died knowing that I did what was right or did my best to do what was right, and even if in the history books they said I did wrong, I would still feel okay about that.
The Don Lemon Show can be found on multiple platforms, including YouTube, X, and Spotify. I'm Kevin Carr.
As we've been reporting throughout the months this year, we're digging deeper now to pay for that gallon of gas. Correspondent Rita Foley reports.
If you haven't had to fill up in the past few days, you may be surprised at how much gas prices have been going up about 10 cents in a week, says the AAA. Gas is about $3.49 a gallon this morning. A week ago, it was only $3.39, and a month ago, just $3.27. What's going on? Well, the AAA points out that demand pops with warmer temperatures and better weather. It is spring now. And then there's the arrival of summer blend gas, which the AAA says tends to increase pump prices by 10 to 15 cents. The cheapest gas is in the South and parts of the Midwest. It's $3.06 in Colorado. But if you're in California, it's $4.91 a gallon. I'm Rita Foley.
America in the Morning for Wednesday, March 20th, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay, senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.